Buenos dias. Good morning, everyone. It's truly wonderful to see you all here. I'm grateful you're all with us. My name is Stu Andrade, and I am a proud member of the board of directors here at the Whatcom Literacy Council. It's great to be here with you this morning. Please know that this event is our biggest fundraiser, and all donations will support free adult literacy programs we offer here in Whatcom County. This morning, we are honored to have Lummi Elder Juanita Jefferson start us off with a blessing. Juanita.
Thank you. Thank you, Stu. Nautsiam Neschala Chasiam. Welcome, good people, best of people, friends and relatives. Welcome to the land, the sacred land of my ancestors. It's so good to have you here. So good to have all of you here today in this room. We pray for a blessing on this space where we all sit together today and share. We share the air. We share the good feeling. We can feel the joy, and we share the joy of being together and honoring a way of life that means so much to each and every one of you, to all of us. So thank you. We ask this blessing on our ability to hear and see and be in touch with one another. We pray that we can be healed of any hurt or harm that may be affecting us today. Anyone who's feeling some loneliness or grieving, anyone who may be having a little illness, we just pray that all the best is going to happen for you today, that you'll feel lifted up by this wonderful gathering and the honoring of this wonderful way of life that you have, that you support and you bring to so many hundreds and hundreds of people, to especially those little children, remembering the first day a child is introduced to a library. That is so touching. I remember taking my 3 granddaughters to the Ferndale Library to sign up for the first time, and how that's never forgotten. So thank you all for all that you provide and share the Whatcom Literacy Council. Bless each and all of you who participate. And we just pray that this place where we all share in Whatcom County is always being blessed, always being here for people to be safe, for people to be well, and share with one another. I can't say enough about sharing. And that is a basic part of our old culture here, was sharing. This was a rich land. There was so much here for people to benefit from. And this beautiful, rich land here, we still feel that it's a place for people to share. So thank you for doing that. I wanted to share one little more blessing that I have a privilege of, and that is my family. My mother's from Dutch and Irish descendancy. My father is a full-blood Lummi. And so I was able to have that blessing of sharing 2 worlds, 2 ways of looking at the world. And I love that my grandmother, my mother's mother, was here in this county from a pioneer family. And that we have the benefit, my family has the benefit, to share the goodness of all of that way of life coming together. And I feel like in the world of literacy that as a child, when I first was introduced to a library, that was what I wanted to know more about. I wanted to know more about the past, what it was like for people in the past, people from around the world. And that's where I found it. Believe it or not, I was shy. I didn't talk very much when I was a child. But that was my place to go, to be in a library. and to be safe and secluded and still explore the world. So for that, again, I know you share this feeling with me, but it's just I'm so thankful to see you all here, and just pray to our Creator that you are all going to have this good feeling today. You are loved, you are respected, you are cared for. And so with that, I'll just close and say thank you again. Thank you for this space to be together. Thank you to my friends who invited me here today. I love you very much, and I'm just honored to have this chance to speak and to share with each and every one of you with all the good work that you do. Excuse me. Haishka Siam. Haishka means thank you. I can't thank you enough. Siam is a special word that we say a person of high status. So when we say Siam, we're honoring you as people of high status. Haishka.
Thank you, Juanita, for starting us off in such a meaningful way. I know there are many of us here who are poets. We are lucky to live in a place where poets flourish and share their work. And we are always proud when one of our poets is recognized for their good work. Rena Priest, who I had a chance to chat to earlier today and is truly a charming person, is one of those poets. She joins us today to offer opening remarks. If you don't know her already, Rena is an enrolled member of the Laktemish Lummi Nation. She serves as the 6th Washington State Poet Laureate from 2021 to 2023 and is the recipient of numerous awards and fellowships, including the 2024 Washington State Book Award, the 2020 Allied Arts Foundation Professional Poets Award, and the 2018 American Book Award. Rena, it's a pleasure and honor to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you so much. Haishka, thank you, Stu. Ait squachil nostalgia, o helix and quanasatla tiakais, sahweltana, sanasna, chuchlamisan. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be here with you again. I can't wait to hear Nancy's recommendations. So I was thinking about what I might say, and listening to some of Juanita's comments and thinking about what literacy has meant to me in my life. I remember when I was young, sitting and drinking a cup of tea, and on the little tea tag, there was this: to see a world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. And that's Blake, right? And I remember reading that on this little tea tag and thinking, oh man, this is so amazing. It's just like dangling here. And it could have been, the name of the brand of the tea. It could have been like instructions on how to brew. It could have been anything, but it was a poem. And it was such a great poem, a little excerpt of this poem. And it opens up infinity in that way, right? That it calls you to think about the world and these things. And I just remember thinking how lucky I am to be able to read this, because I was very young, and reading has always been a marvel to me, but especially at a young age, like, I can read. This is what a gift to be able to just see something and read it. And then on the other end of that, I was in Japan a couple years ago, and everything in Tokyo is in English as well as in Japanese. But we went out to see the world's oldest known wisteria tree, and it was out in the country. And out there, there's no English anywhere, and so you're just kind of finding your way along. And I thought, man, I can't read anything. So what that must be for people arriving to a new country where the language is new, or never having the gift of being able to read. It's very isolating and feels very strange. And I think that what the Literacy Council does is such a gift to the people in our community. And so I'm just going to share a poem of mine, and it's called To Love a Place. To love a place, begin with songbirds, salmon runs, and blossoms of the wild sweet rose. Feed your love, let it grow. Love the low-slung clouds, heavy with their precious cargo. Love the face of the mountainside, glowing in the early evening light. Love the monochrome shine of winter skies. Love the seashore's dance of waves, those eternal chorus lines with skirts of frothy lace. Love the delicate fingers of rain tapping out their lonely songs on foggy window panes. Love rain as it finds its way in every shade of blue and green and gray. Love the cycles to which our lives and habits of time are tied. From morning mist, we learn to rise, while the meandering creek is proof that every raindrop finds its path through the city and to the sea at last. To love a place, become the place, and let it love you back. Thank you. And so to close, I'll just say that one way to do that is to give the gift of reading, to be able to connect everybody to everything through this amazing technology, this amazing gift that we have, which is literacy. So thank you all so much for coming out and loving this place.
Thank you, Rena. What a beautiful way to begin the program. Please note that Village Books has copies of her poetry for sale right there. I would like to share a special thank you to our Pulitzer sponsors, BP Cherry Point Refinery and Puget Sound Energy for helping us out in such a big way this morning, and to the many businesses that came in with Newbury sponsorships. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Village Books for being here bright and early. It's great to have them make available the books that Nancy Pearl will be presenting to us. Our deepest gratitudes to you all. Now, each year we have an award we like to give. We include this in our program for a business or a person who has helped out the Whatcom Literacy Council in a significant way. This year's Friend of Literacy Award goes to none other than Bill Garrett's. Bill Garrett's has run international schools all over the world. When he and his wife retired to Bellingham, he came to the Whatcom Literacy Council to see if he could help. He joined the board of directors, began tutoring, and has volunteered as a classroom assistant at Whatcom Community College. His specialty is coaching people who want to pass the test to become a U.S. citizen. To date, he has coached 50 adults as they prepare for this important exam.
Thanks, Stu. Just a very few words. I've been a teacher type person since I was 26, and as you can see, I'm very old. These students that I work with, who are all immigrants, are the hardest working, most dedicated I've ever come across. For example, Christian from Colombia, he works all night at a door factory in Linden, comes to class for 2 hours, and then has homework 4 days a week. There's Elena, who is from Ukraine, who puts her children in school, comes to class for 2 hours, and then goes and works as a cook in a restaurant. These students are just amazing. The sad part is that because of political changes, Whatcom Community College only offers classes for them 4 days a week. So they've lost 20% of their learning opportunities. Also, many of our sister organizations have been shut down because of funding cuts, so we have more students coming to our doors to learn English. If you ever felt generous and wanted to help people who really need your help and make good use of it, please be generous. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. As I mentioned before, my name is Stu Andrade, and I'm a proud member of the board here at Whatcom Literacy Council. It's truly a privilege to be addressing you all here this morning. And while I definitely mean that in the usual Tim Robbins giving a keynote kind of way, I also mean that literally. I, a brown man whose family hails from Honduras, am addressing this lovely room full of distinguished guests in what I consider to be rather polished, fluent English. Thanks for laughing. Like many of you here, I learned English simply by being a child. I just existed, really. I did the everyday things you do as a kid. I turned at the heel, waved goodbye to my mom before I got on the school bus. I became fully literate just by doing my duty as a kid and going to school day after day. I didn't have to seek anything out, like resources. I didn't have to arrange for a sitter after work or, study verbs at the dentist's office. I'm going to assume most of you here can relate to that most of you just had this overwhelming and often overlooked privilege of becoming literate simply by being. I'd like to invite you all to kind of acknowledge that in your own way. The fact that we can just read blog posts on our phones or read the newspaper in the morning or, read a text from a friend, the back of a cereal box. For many of us, reading is just like breathing. It's effortless, it's invisible, and it's content. But not for everyone. Unlike me, and probably most of you, my mom did have to do all of those things I mentioned. She did have to seek out resources. She did study English at the dentist's office while I got my incisors pulled. She did arrange for childcare so that she could attend expensive classes after work. She did all of this while raising 2 kids just so she could reach a basic level of literacy that many people would scoff at. You see, my mom, she was forced to leave school in the 5th grade. She had to become a child laborer to support her family. So despite her love of learning, she had to give up that privilege of education. So I invite you to think about it. What would your life look like if that happened to you? Who would you be today if your access to education ended at age 10? Before I get too heavy and ruin this lovely morning and breakfast, I'll tell you something great. My mom is doing amazing in life right now. Today she works in disaster relief across the southeastern U.S., and she loves it. She journals often in, those old, like 99-cent, well, probably not anymore 99-cent, but the 99-cent spiral notebooks, she loves that. She does that for fun. This lady who used to struggle for every single word, now she just writes for the sheer joy of it. She writes anything all the time. She'll do it in like address books, and just not abuse the structure and just write anything. But, she did it. She pulled it off. She celebrates that every day in her own cute way. Meanwhile, I, a spoiled American, just doom scroll, tragic headlines day after day. But my mom, she can't wait to get home and write her favorite words. So again, I just invite you to think about it. Do you value literacy the way she does? Can you honestly say you don't take it for granted? Because I know I do. What was handed to me, and most of you, on a satin pillow, my mom had to claw at for decades. Now imagine, let's say young Doris is my mom. I didn't say that. Doris is my mom. What if young Doris had a peer to sit with her week after week to help her practice English? What if she had a community of learners to walk alongside her on that journey? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, I'm very proud to say that vision is at the very heart of the Whatcom Literacy Council. Everyone in this room can contribute to that. Everyone has the power to make that world possible, to support the mothers and fathers and community members that took the same journey my mom once took. That privilege that we all received simply by being born and raised here, we're able to pass that on to others. Now, at another event, in another room, I might ask you to do more than I'm going to ask you to do today. I might ask you to call your elected leaders or march or organize or protest. But today I'm going to ask you to do something far easier, far simpler. I'm going to ask you to donate. Acknowledge this privilege that we all hold, this gift of literacy. Give what you can, whether large or small, to support the parents who are doing what my mom did, to support the members of our community who are too afraid to walk into Fred Meyer because they fear their English will betray them, Support those who want nothing more than to connect with you in your shared language. Your contribution directly changes lives. It creates opportunity, it builds community, it makes people like me possible. Every single one of you breathe life into the unity, diversity, and strength of our community. Now, on the table in front of you, there's a small envelope where you can place a check. You can also write down your credit card information. Don't worry, we black out and shred each envelope after we run the donation. We don't share your data with anyone. If you want to do a check, please make your check out to the Whatcom Literacy Council and snail mail it to P.O. Box 1292, that's 1292, Bellingham, Washington, 98227. We also do Venmo, so if you're a Venmo person, it's Whatcom Literacy. There's also a QR code on your table that'll take you to our website, www.whatcomliteracy.org. You can make a gift online as well. Particularly, we like it when you sign up to make a monthly donation. It helps with our cash flow, and hopefully it's easier on your wallet as well. If you have bid on an item in the auction, we'll go ahead and circle the winning bid 10 minutes-ish after the program is over. Staff will be standing by to run your credit card on our cell phones. Lastly, now more than ever, your contribution will help us offer free literacy service to adults who are motivated to learn. Thank you all for your support. All right, thanks for listening to me talk a whole bunch. This morning, we're lucky to have our friend Chuck Robinson here to welcome our guest speaker. Many of you already know Chuck Robinson, a man who has spent his life finding creative ways to strengthen the fabric of our community. He and his wife Dee founded Village Books, growing it to become a thriving neighborhood institution that is now run by Paul, Kelly, and Sarah. Yeah. Chuck's endeavors have included serving on many local boards, including 10 years at the Whatcom Community Foundation Board, and he has worked nationally with booksellers, authors, and librarians. Chuck and Dee now live in the Green Valley area of South Tucson, Arizona, but he joins us here this morning as a favor to the Whatcom Literacy Council. Chuck, thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you, Stu. And thank you very much, Catherine Friedman, for inviting me to come. I had committed to do this before we moved to Arizona. I flew in yesterday and I'm flying home today. So it's so great to see so many of my friends here this morning, including the folks from Village Books who recently took over this store like almost 9 years ago. And are running it much better than Dee and I ever did. We love those folks and hope you'll continue to support Village Books. It's such a privilege to be able to introduce Nancy today. We've known each other for years. Nancy, as you probably know, is the best-known librarian in the world. Well, really, you know, who else has an action figure made from them? And I own one. But anyone who believes that prim and proper shushing librarian really identifies Nancy's personality probably has not read George and Lizzie. And I highly recommend it to you. So George and Lizzie isn't the only book, and that's a novel. It's not the only book that Nancy has written. So she first did some books that were called Now Read This, which covered fiction from 1978 till 2001. She published the book Book Lust in 2003 and More Book Lust 2 years later. Both are on our bookshelf at home. There was also a teen version of those books called Book Crush, and she added Book Lust to Go for travelers. She's also a subject of the book, Library Girl, How Nancy Pearl Became America's Most Celebrated Librarian by Karen Henry Clark. She's written book reviews for numerous publications. She was a longtime reviewer on NPR. Whatcom Reads actually owes its inspiration to Nancy. In 1998, she created a program in Seattle called If All of Seattle Read One Book. That's believed to be the first one area, one book program in the country. And it's been copied by many cities and, in this case, by an entire county. Nancy's been the recipient of many awards. Among them, Library Journal named her Librarian of the Year in 2011. And she received the National Book Awards Literarian Award for Outstanding Service to American Literary Community. Now, it's time for you to get out your pens or pencils and write down or make notes beside the books that you might want to read, which you can buy at the table in the back from Village Books. Now, please help me welcome my dear friend, Nancy Pearl.
Goodness, hard to know what to say after that. I'm exhausted just listening to that. Phew. Okay, first I'm going to put on my bookseller hat to talk about the books at the back of the table. They're alphabetical by title of the book. That goes against my librarian soul, but so be it. Renee's books of poetry are at the end closest to the door, so they're all there. There won't be a reader reward for the books that you're purchasing today because 10% of the sales goes to the Whatcom Literacy Council. So thank you, Village Books, for that. If you have to leave and don't feel you have a lot of time to, pick up the books today, you can fill out the form and hand it and include your phone number on the form, hand it to the folks at Village Books, and they will get in touch with you and make sure you get those books. And they take all payments except TAP, which I don't know what that is. So it's okay with me if they don't take that. All right, I think I'm going to talk really fast because I picked a lot of books on this list because I feel like I read a lot of really good books last year. And that was a change from the previous years when it didn't seem like, when often it seemed like the kind of book I was looking for wasn't there. So here we go. The first book is Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. Oh, let me say I listened to most of these books, and I am a huge audiobook listener. In fact, at some points, I think that I like that. I enjoy it more than sitting and reading now because I can do it when I'm doing my walks. I can do it when I'm doing my jigsaw puzzles. It's just sort of there, and I love it. And Libro, which is an audiobook seller, kind of comparable to Audible, but much better. If you subscribe to Libro, then a part of what you're paying goes to support the bookstore of your choice. And Village Books is a Libro bookstore, so another way to help the community grow. All right, Beautyland, Marie-Helene Bertino. You know how when you're a kid, well, I'll just speak for myself. When I was a kid, I felt like I was like alien. I felt, I was so different and there was nobody who was like me. And I think a lot of kids feel that kind of alienation from, their parents, where they live, their classmates. Well, the main character, Adina, of Beautyland is literally an alien. She has been sent to Earth to observe and send back notes on this strange world that we are living in. She communicates with the people in her
with the people of her type. She communicates with them, and I love this part, via fax machine. So what Marie is so good at doing is capturing the life of young adults, of children and young adults. And we see Adina's life from birth through adulthood. And she did the same thing. I just have to put a plug in for an earlier book of hers, which was called 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas, which is another wonderful, wonderful novel. And I see some people have read it and agree with me. Thank you. I did talk about it here at one of the breakfasts. The next book on the list, nonfiction. This was a good year for me for nonfiction. And I think both of these, all three of the nonfiction books that I'm going to talk about are great for gifts. This one is called The Crazies. Now, remember from last year, I told you that in a nonfiction book, there's always a colon, 2 dots. So here we go. The Crazies, the Cattleman, the Wind Prospector, and a War Out West. Well, if any of you have read Bleak House, remember Bleak House and that long lawsuit, Jarndyce versus Jarndyce? Well, this book is about another long lawsuit, only this is real, and it's not in England, it's in Montana. And the author, Amy Gamerman, writes for the Wall Street Journal she writes about this interesting combination of real estate and culture. And this is a book that hits at both of those things because it's about the attempt by some ranchers to start a wind farm on their property. And the, one might say, interlopers from Texas, oilmen, cattlemen, who are determined that their view of the Yellowstone River should not be blocked by a wind farm. You don't know until the last page who won that lawsuit. And that book is a thick book. I listened to it. It was absolutely riveting. And I want to interview the author, Amy Gamerman, for the research that she did for this book is so amazing. And I can just imagine the pile of 3x5 cards where she made notes on what she wanted to include, because I swear she did not waste any bit of research that she did. So there are people in here from Las Vegas attorneys to a woman Olympic rower, all take part in this fabulous, interesting book. So that's The Crazies. Highly recommend it. The next book is a novel, Crooked Letter. When I sent this list, we send this list to Catherine and to the Village Books folks, and Paul always comments on them, usually good. But this time he sent back a note, and he said, "You talked about Crooked Letter in 2017." I thought, well, that was the year it must have come out. I loved this book, and for some reason, had been in my mind recently. Crooked Letter has 2 timelines: late 1970s Mississippi and 1990s Mississippi. And there are 2 boys, Larry and Silas, and they meet as middle schoolers, and it's very unlikely in Mississippi in the 1970s, but they become very good friends. Larry is white. He's mostly an outcast among his schoolmates, while Silas, who is black, is the best baseball player on the high school team and above. Now, everything changes when Larry takes a girl on a date and she's never seen again. Although no body was ever found, although no charges were brought against Larry, he is the object of great suspicion, and the town is pretty convinced that he did something to that girl. Fast forward 20 years, and Silas returns to town as the constable of this small Georgia town, I think, Mississippi town. Of course, Crooked Letter, M.I., Crooked Letter. Silas returns as the constable of this small town, and another girl disappears. ... The next book on the list, this is a wonderful book. They're all pretty good books back there, let me tell you. The next book on the list is called Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. So John Green is probably best known, well, undeniably best known as a writer of fantastic books for teens. And if you haven't read his novel, The Fault in Our Stars, run right out and get it. It is so good. And in his fiction, and his blogs, and he's a very public person, what you see from all of his books is what a humane person he is, how he really cares about humanity. And this book is a history of tuberculosis. I listened to this book as well. I felt like I had to stop all the time to re-listen to a sentence and write it down because it was so interesting. So let me tell you a little bit about tuberculosis. It's still the biggest cause of death worldwide. One thing that he does, COVID eclipsed it in 2020, but it has since regained its number one place. It's both curable and preventable, and John Green believes and gives us reason to believe that the social inequities in our society are what keep it in that number one killer position. It's a beautiful book. It begins with John Green meeting a young man in Africa, in Sierra Leone, who has tuberculosis, and what that means for him, his family, and the society at large. I knew that I was going to be a librarian when I was 10 years old, but I have to say, if I had read that book back then, I might have gone into public health. I can't stand, I wouldn't be a good nurse or anything like that, but I could probably, public health is so important, and John Green brings that out so well. It's a fabulous book. The next book is by Susan Choi, Flashlight. Big book. In fact, one of the things I thought that was so fun this morning is many of those books I haven't ever seen the covers of because I, read them on an ebook or a pre-pub or look at the pre-pub books. Susan Choi is one of my favorite writers, Chinese American writer. She's the author of another of my very favorite books called American Woman. If you haven't read that, it's a fictional biography of Patty Hearst. And she does that so well. So this book, Flashlight, a huge book. It's impossible to summarize. It has elements of so many different genres. It's partly a thriller. It's partly a satire. It's partly a coming of age novel. It's partly a domestic drama. It has everything in it. The main character is a child. We meet her when she's about 9 years old. Her name is Louisa. And she and her father are going for a walk on the seashore in Japan, where her father was raised. And the next thing that happens is that she's found unconscious on the seashore, on the shore, and her father is gone. And this is the story of what happens and what that is like. There's a lot of history in it, which I like. I like learning from the books that I read. It's a really good book. The next book, Foxwife. Oh my gosh, this is such a good book. And it's in paperback. Yangtze Chu. You don't often talk about the gorgeous writing when you're reading a mystery novel, but that's what will strike you when you read this book. It's based on Chinese folklore, but that's taken in a contemporary mystery. And it introduces two absolutely wonderful characters. Bao, a detective determined to discover the murderer of a young courtesan, and a fox spirit who wants to exact revenge for the murder of her child. They're so good. You have to just go get that book. Okay, next book. This is a great biography. If you're a movie person, especially if you like the Turner Classic Movies, that kind of thing, Giant Love by Julie Gilbert. It's a biography of Edna Ferber, along with a history of Hollywood. And it focuses on the filming of Ferber's novel, Giant, with, of course, James Dean and Elizabeth Taylor. Believe me, you will want to, read the book, watch the film, and then read Giant. That would be a great book club, sort of sequence, I think. Ferber won the Pulitzer Prize for her novel So Big, but nobody talks about Edna Ferber anymore. I mean, she's just like one of those, I think, lost mid-century writers. But it's fascinating. This book I found fascinating to read how it was transformed into film. And then I gave you my good book group idea. We don't have a copy of the next book that I wanted to tell you about, but they do have it at the Ferndale store, I think. Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rundell. Is that on the list? Do we have that? Okay. So anyway, it's fantasy. It's one of those not at all like Harry Potter fantasies. It was Blackwell's, the big bookstore in England, Blackwell's book of the year it came out. It's called Impossible Creatures. So take a look at that. Oh, The Listeners by Maggie Stiefvater. So I feel like I should give people an award if they could have pronounced that author's last name correctly, but it is pronounced Stiefvater. I just interviewed her recently for that little television show that I do, and she's just a delight, and I loved this book. This is her first novel for adults. She's better known for her teen novels, the Raven trilogy, which is fabulous. And I know that people will like that as well. So this is an example of what I would call what we tend to refer to as magic realism, but I like to think of it as elastic realism. This is a realistic book. It's based on real events, but what the author does is stretch some of that realism. So it's set in January 1942 at a very, very fancy resort hotel in West Virginia. She calls it the Avalon Hotel and Spa, just this luxury resort. And it's always offered everything that you would want at a luxury resort in the wilds of West Virginia. June Hudson, who grew up in Appalachia, not far from this gorgeous hotel, is now the general manager of the hotel. And what she learns in 1942 is that the FBI wants the resort to not take any regular guests, but they want the resort to house Axis diplomats from Germany, diplomats from Italy, and the FBI will send people there to listen, and hence the title, The Listeners. This is really hard for the people who work there because so many of them have relatives who are fighting the Germans, who are fighting the Italians. And here they have to maintain that high level of a customer service for these Axis diplomats. And June has to handle all of that. Plus, the FBI agent who's in charge of that listening, that job of supervising the listeners, the other FBI agents, is somebody that June is getting a little bit interested in. So that's a really nice thing she has to deal with. Now, this really happened. Here's the reality. The State Department in 1942 took over several of those big resorts and housed Axis diplomats there. And when I interviewed her, she said, yeah, she heard that. When she heard that, she knew there had to be a story in there. And I think she's come up with just an absolutely wonderful novel. So don't miss that. The next book, Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books. So I got an email from somebody, I didn't even remember who, but this person said, she said, Dear Nancy, I was reading along in this book, which I really am enjoying. And then I saw that the librarian's password is Nancy Pearl. So I thought, oh, well, I should read that book. So I read it and have since recommended it to hundreds of people who have all enjoyed it as much as I did. So it's set in a small Georgia town in the present. Lula Dean, the title character, is somebody who has lived in this little town all her life, and she was one of those people who wanted to be popular in high school and kind of elbowed her way into that kind of popularity and has become a kind of bitter adult. Now, two things are happening in Lula Dean's mind. One is that the library is too full of books that she feels should not be in the library for the same reasons that we always hear from people who believe that certain books should not be in the library. And the other thing is that little town has a big statue of the founder, who was a Confederate general. And there's a movement in the town to get rid of that statue. Lula Dean, no. Both, those books should not be there, and that statue had better stay there. So what Lula Dean does is make such a fuss at the city council meetings that all of those books that she does not agree with have been taken off the shelf and are stored in the head of the library, foundation board, whatever, in her basement. Now, the person who is the head of the library board was the person that Lula Dean hates the most from their high school years. So, this book is thoroughly enjoyable. It has a wonderful first chapter, and it has a terrific last chapter. Do you agree? Yes. So the first chapter, what happens is that all of a sudden, in the dead of night, an angel comes, and that's how it's described in the book. An angel comes and takes the covers off Lula Dean's books and puts them on the cover of the banned books, which the angel has taken, and they are now in that little free library with Lula Dean's with the covers of the original books. One of those books, so the townspeople are, of course, so interested. They're coming by checking out the books, and then, to their shock, are reading these books that the Lula Dean didn't think should be there. One of the books is an erotic cake book. And the person who... And one of the other, so as the book goes on, you get to know another member of the community. And the person who gets the erotic cake book is this woman, I have to say, a young woman in her 80s, a young woman who always has her family over for the July 4th, and she always makes this fabulous cake. She's a fabulous baker, but her family wants to move her out of their house, out of her own house. And she was a great lawyer. And so she gets a copy, her granddaughter gives her a copy of the erotic cake book. And so for the 4th of July, she makes a cake in the shape of a penis that explodes. Now I have to hurry. Now one of the things that I have to say is that what this book gives you the impression of is that if you read one banned book, you will immediately drop all your prejudices and become a really good person. Well, would that were so. But, so that's kind of a little bit of elastic realism in this book. That kind of thing doesn't happen. But nonetheless, this is just great fun. Great fun. The next book is Mona's Eyes. This book just read. It was another big bookstore's book of the year. I think if Kelly has anything to say about it, it will be Village Books book of the year. Mona's Eyes is, there's Kelly back there. Mona's Eyes is the story of a little girl who it's translated from the French. A little girl has an unexpected attack of blindness, and her parents take her to a doctor. And while her eyesight has come back, the doctors all believe that she is going to lose her eyesight totally. She's like 11, I think 10 or 11 years old. And her parents want her to go to a psychiatrist. Her grandfather, pretending that he's taking her to a psychiatrist, instead takes her around to the museums in Paris so she can look at these paintings, and the two together visit these 52 different paintings over the course of a year. It's a wonderful sort of grandfather-granddaughter story, and the book has small pictures of each of the paintings that Mona and her grandfather see. But when I read it, it didn't have that. And so I had my iPad open so I could look at all those pictures. And really, buying that book is a lot cheaper than taking an art appreciation class. And you'll get really the wonderful same benefits. Okay, the next book on the list is Old Filth. This came out, I think, in 2002. I'm a huge fan of Jane Gardam, the author. My two favorite books of hers are her first book, A Long Way from Verona. Highly recommend that. And Bilgewater, highly recommend that. I tried, of course, reading Old Filth in 2002 and just could, for whatever reason, and you all know this happens sometimes, I just couldn't get into it. And then I thought, who would name a book Old Filth? And then you start reading the book and you find out that filth stands for failed in London, try Hong Kong. And it's about a British barrister who indeed does not do so well in England, and he and his wife move to Hong Kong, where they do very, very well indeed. This is the first book in what people call a trilogy, but I kind of think of it as a triptych, the way three paintings go together, and each painting makes the other paintings brighter and more understandable. So this first book is told from the point of view of Old Filth, that's his nickname, Sir Edward Feathers, and his wife Elizabeth. The second book, which unfortunately is not available, but is going to be available, I believe, soon, because I know the publisher loves those books as much as I do. The second book is called The Man with the Wooden Hat, and that is told from the point of view of Elizabeth, of Edward's wife. And the third book, Last Friends, is told by Edward's and Elizabeth's friend and, frenemy, because he is another British barrister who left England to go to Hong Kong. So what you get in these three books is the picture of these three lives. And honestly, I think these are three of the best books that I have ever read. The writing is fantastic, and Jane Gardam just is fabulous. The next book, Curtis Sittenfeld, romantic comedy. Oh my gosh, I think we can all use a break from doom scrolling. Curtis Sittenfeld, I think last year I maybe talked about her book Eligible. Eligible is this fabulous rom-com that is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice set in the present in Cincinnati. It is a joy, and it's a wonderful audiobook. Romantic comedy is another rom-com, and I don't want anybody to apologize for what they read. You know how we all say, oh, I'm just reading a little, like my husband will say, what are you reading? And even though I so strongly believe you shouldn't apologize for anything that you're reading, he'll say, oh, what are you reading? And I'll say, oh, just a mystery. And I'll go like that. Oh, just a mystery. You know, like, come on, Nancy, you know, live up to what you believe. So romantic comedy is really set at a Saturday Night Live environment where the main woman character is a writer, and the romantic, male character is the guest host. It's great fun. Okay, the next book. Oh gosh. Okay, I have to. The next book, Sacrament by Susan Straight. So I knew Susan Straight's books from her very first book, which was published a long time ago and was called I've Been in Sorrow's Kitchen and Licked Out All the Pots, which I think is a fabulous, fabulous title. Sacrament is set during the early COVID years. Do you remember what those were like? The fear that pervaded, this was before, before vaccinations, before any of that. And this is a book set in San Bernardino, California, near the Coachella Valley. And it's the story of 3 nurses who were COVID nurses at that time at the San Bernardino Hospital. And because they didn't want to infect their families, they all moved to trailers right near the hospital. And when I just interviewed Susan Straight, she said that the book came to her for a couple of reasons. And one is that every morning she would see these nurses walking by her house to the hospital, and she knew there must be some story to that. And those are the nurses who show up in this book, who are really the subjects of this book. And one of them is a beautiful singer, and she sings to the patients even in their comas. This just brought, I think for me, I've forgotten what that time was like and how scary it was. But this book, I have to say, brought that back and made me appreciate those hospital workers who risked their lives to take care of people. The other thing I loved about this book, I always love it when I learn something. And what I learned in this book is that the Coachella Valley in California near San Bernardino is the biggest supplier of dates worldwide. And so and there's some date picking in this book. And so I learned that we sell dates all over the world, to Saudi Arabia, to your grocery store, next door, wherever. And that was so fascinating because you never think about that kind of thing, but I thought about it. So I loved this book, Sacrament. The immediately previous book to this introduces 1 or 2 of the characters who appear in Sacrament, and it is called Mecca. I mean, actually, I hope Susan Straight becomes your next, I want to read all her books kind of writer. When I finished this book, I went back and I read her memoir called In the Country of Women, which is fabulous. When Juanita talked this morning, when she gave us the blessing at the beginning, it actually reminded me of that book, In the Country of Women, because it's the story of the ancestors of both Susan Straight and her husband. And her husband is Black. And Susan met her ex-husband when they were on the school bus. They were 11 years old. And it's the strength of this is what Susan Straight would say, that it's the strength of the women that keep the families going. And that's what I got from your blessing, Juanita. It was very meaningful. Next book on the list. So Susan Straight, love her. The next book on the list, The Strangers, The Strangers, 5 Extraordinary Black Men in the Worlds That Made Them. This is one of those mashups of fiction and nonfiction. And what the author has done is taken 5 Black men, some very familiar, for instance, Malcolm X, some a little less familiar, Matthew Henson, the explorer, and then 3 other men, and is telling their story, but making up, not facts necessarily, but making up conversations and dialogue and things like that. So he really owes a lot, he says, to Toni Morrison, saying Black people are spoken of and written about as objects of history, not subjects within it. So that's a really, that's what he has, what the author has tried to do in this book, is make them subjects within history. The next book on the list, Emma Patty's Tilt. It's a first novel. In the interests of truth, I will say Kelly did not like this book. I, however, did like this book. It's set over, but what I think we would both agree on, without a doubt, is that it raises your level of anxiety a lot. And I could not put it down when I read it. There are 2 things probably as a result to reading this book, if you read this book. One is that you won't want to go to Oregon. And the other is you won't want to go to an IKEA store. Okay, so the main character is this 9-month pregnant woman. She is in an IKEA store in Portland to at last buy a crib for her unborn child when the earthquake hits Portland. It is so well done. I mean, just talking about, I could feel my anxiety coming up. I'm going to be breathless. Oh my gosh, it was just a page turner, and it's a little book. So and it's her first novel. Okay, A Walk in the Park, the true story of a spectacular misadventure in the Grand Canyon. So this is a false post-colon thing. That should not be there, because because that gives you the impression that it's like Bill Bryson's walking the Appalachian Trail. And while part of this book is a misadventure, because these 2 very experienced National Geographic photographer and a writer for National Geographic, even though they are, yes, unprepared to explore the Grand Canyon and indeed need to be airlifted out, the book is really less about that than it is about what the Grand Canyon is all about, the history of the Grand Canyon, the native tribes who made it their home, the fight to make it a national park, and what traversing the Grand Canyon from one end to the other, how dangerous it is, how few people have ever done it, and how in the end, these 2 young men, not so young, middle-aged men, do it. I listened to this book. It was just fascinating. I love history, and this is a book that brings it to life. I think this would be a great gift for anybody interested in the outdoors. And early in the book, he talks about, oh my gosh, what is his name? Colin Fletcher, the man who walked through time. This is, you'll want to go, if you haven't read that, you'll want to go back and read that, because he refers to that. Just a terrific book. It won the National Outdoor Book Award. It won the Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence, named a Best Book of the Year by so many different people, organizations. Next book, I only have 2 more. Whew. So the next book, The Warm Hands of Ghosts. Oh gosh, I loved this book. I loved all these books, but But I loved this book. In this book is another example of elastic realism. I think this book would be a really good book club book, and here's why. Set during World War I, the later years in World War I, and the main character, a nurse named Laura Ivan, who's from Halifax, Nova Scotia, has gone to France and Belgium to be there to nurse the soldiers there. And her brother, who is also there, Laura has come home with a bad case of PTSD, what we will call PTSD now, what was then known as shell shock. She has come home. Her brother is still in the trenches fighting, and she gets the letter that says he is missing in action. And she decides that she's going to go there and find him. And she does that. And in the course of doing that, the question I think that the author wants us to ask ourselves is who we would be without our memories. You know, who would we be without those even bad memories? You know, even memories that make you like cringe. Who would you be without memories, without your specific memories? And that's what the author is asking us to consider in this book. And it's really fabulous. It's a fabulous book. Okay, the last book, I think, of all the books on there, I think the last book, Wilderness by Angela Flournoy, has the best cover. And I am a 1,000-piece jigsaw kind of gal, and that would be a great jigsaw puzzle. Angela Flournoy, about 10 years ago, she wrote a book called The Turner House, which was set in Detroit and was one of my very favorite books of 2015. So she took about 10 years to write her second novel, but I think it was really worth the wait. It focuses on 4 Black women over 2 decades, starting in 2008. And you remember 2008 when everything crashed. And when the group of 4 are in their early 20s. And the book is about their relationships over the years to each other, but more importantly, I think their relationships to themselves and to the world around them. And it's told from those 4 different points of view. So if you like that kind of thing, she does it very, very well. So that's the books. Those are the books for 2025. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Those great assortment of books. Just so you all know, Village Books has all of those books available here this morning. The list of recommended titles will be posted on our webpage as well, and all of them can be ordered through Village Books. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this year's Literacy Breakfast with the Whatcom Literacy Council.